Well, hello and welcome to the 2020 Green Waste Volunteer Training. My name is Julie Siegenthaler. I'm a program manager for the Fire Safe Council of Nevada County, and I've put together a training for all of our volunteers to view. Hopefully it won't take you too long to go through it, and I appreciate your attention to some of the finer points in this presentation. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact me. My email address is programs@rufiresafe.com. You can also reach us at the office number, which is 530-272-1122. So without further ado, let's get the training going. First of all, I'd like to go over the training objectives with you, just so that you understand what it is that we'll be covering in this presentation. The first objective is learning whether you should volunteer. The second one is learning about using personal protective equipment, or PPE. The third objective is learning about keeping your equipment clean. The fourth is learning how the site will operate in general. The next one is learning which load items cannot be accepted. There are some things that we can't accept at this event, and we'll go over that. Also, I'm going to have a review of the safety reminders, and then I'm going to provide a link for you in your email to take a little pop quiz, and I'd appreciate it if you just take a moment or two to fill in that quiz before you come to the site to volunteer, as there's some important information that's in there. All right, first one, should you volunteer? That's the big question. So if you feel that you, or suspect rather, that you have the virus, COVID-19 virus, then definitely you should not be volunteering. If you have been exposed and you know that you have been in the last 2 weeks, we ask that you not volunteer. Also, if you have any symptoms that are resembling COVID-19 and you're just not sure, then please stay home just to keep you and everybody else safe. Also, if you have other health considerations like a respiratory vulnerability or some other serious health condition, it might be best if you sit this one out. However, if you are healthy and if you can work for 6 hours without tiring, then this is a great opportunity for you. Keep in mind that when I say work for 6 hours, I'm not talking about loading and unloading material from the residents' vehicles as they bring them in, but rather directing traffic, inspecting loads, and collecting some data. That's really all that's going to be required of you. Okay, so we're talking about the personal protective equipment, or face coverings, or masks, I guess, if you prefer that term. We're going to provide one for each person for each shift. Many of them are reusable. If you get a cloth mask, that does not mean that you are using someone else's mask. We're going to make sure that everything is sanitized. I think actually we have enough masks that we don't need to do that to wash them, but we'll see how it goes with the volunteers as time progresses. If you have your own mask that you prefer, or one that's been provided to you by somebody else, you're welcome to bring that with you and then take that home with you at the end of the shift. If you're going to bring your own face covering, just make sure that you understand that you're doing so at your own risk. We can't guarantee that you aren't going to be subjected to the COVID-19 virus, but we're going to do everything we can to mitigate any risk of transmission. Make sure that when you have your face covering with you, you have it on your face at all times, and try to refrain from touching it during your shift. And if you're going to come into your car and you've got a face covering, make sure that that face covering doesn't go into the car with you, because then you're just potentially transmitting the virus should it be on the surface of the face covering. The CDC recommends at least a cloth covering over your mouth and nose, but they want to advise us all that they are not, that was my son sneezing, that they are not as effective as a medical grade mask. Maintain a 6-foot distance from other people around you, even if other people are wearing a face covering. So just so you know, the virus can spread between people speaking or coughing or sneezing, like my son just did, in close proximity. We're not going to be providing gloves to people at this event. Instead, we're going to be providing hand washing stations, and we just ask that you use those hand washing stations frequently. You're welcome to use gloves from home if you like. Just keep in mind that just because you have a glove on doesn't mean that you're not transmitting virus germs to other surfaces, so just bear that in mind. Please do refrain from touching your nose, your eyes, your face covering, your mouth, etc. during the shift. The best practice is, of course, to wash your hands often at the hand washing station during your shift. Just keep in mind, gloves can promote a false sense of security, so make sure you're washing your hands often and you're washing them well. So we're back to kindergarten when we talk about washing our hands the right way. Make sure you wet your hands with clean water, turn off the tap and apply the soap, lather your hands by rubbing them together, as if that were not obvious, and then make sure you're washing the backs of your hands between your fingers and under your nails. It's recommended that you spend 20 seconds washing your hands at a time, and the rule of thumb that I've heard a lot is singing happy birthday while you're doing that. If you want to sing it out loud, you're welcome to do so. If you want to keep it in your head instead, that's fine too. Make sure that you rinse your hands well under running water, and then dry your hands using a clean towel or paper towel, or air dry them. You can also use hand sanitizer to help keep your hands clean if soap and water are not available. We're going to have things like wipes and hand sanitizer on site. Again, I think the hand washing station is probably the best bet. Just keep in mind that other people will be touching that hand washing station. So if you've washed your hands and then you reach over and you touch something on the hand washing station, maybe that's contaminated and then hand washing didn't do any good. So just bear that in mind while you're trying to keep your hands clean. And as always, I've said this a couple of times I think already, avoid touching your eyes, your nose, your mouth with unwashed hands, and just like they tell us in grade school, keep your hands to yourself. We're going to provide signs and electronic equipment, and all of that's going to be cleaned with disinfectant wipes by your shift supervisor before your shift starts and after your shift ends. We're going to take care of all that sanitation for you. If you wind up trading a position with somebody else, let's say someone is directing traffic and someone else is collecting data and you guys think that you might want to switch that up, we have to make sure that all of that equipment gets wiped down. The best rule of thumb is stay in the same position that you started in. You know, if there's some compelling reason why you can't, by all means change, but let's make sure we clean the equipment before you guys trade positions. Don't trade any gloves or face coverings. That should go without saying. Don't do that for any reason. There are going to be porta potties on site that are provided by Johnny on the Spot, and we just ask that you wait as long as possible after somebody has exited the porta potty, just to give that space, you know, a little bit of time to sort of air out and put some distance between you and the next person that's using it. And make sure you wash your hands afterward. And then if you're feeling for some reason that a surface that you've been working with has been contaminated, by all means, wipe down the equipment as often as you feel is necessary, just for your own safety and for your own comfort level. And make sure that you throw away the wipes that are used as soon as possible. Okay? Now, if you have to cough or you have to sneeze, you can certainly remove your face covering at that time if you want to. Make sure you're turning away from somebody else, and then try to just hold on to the loops and pull the loops off instead of grabbing the front of the face covering and then pulling it off that way. If you can, if you have allergies or something like that, bring some tissues with you that you can use, and then throw those in the trash after they've been used, or stuff them into your pockets, however you want to deal with that. Make sure they're not laying around the site. You could always sneeze or cough into your elbow if you're not able to react as quickly as you might like to in terms of finding a tissue or something like that. If the hand washing station runs out of water or soap, by all means use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer, which we'll provide for you. Keep in mind, the sites are going to be a little bit dusty, and so you want to prepare for that in advance, and that's why I recommend bringing some tissues of your own. If you have seasonal allergies, it'd probably be best to make sure you have taken allergy medicine that day. All right, so that's the safety portion of this. I hope that was informative. These are all the same rules that we would use if we were doing defensible space advisory visits and things like that, in terms of using protective gear and masks and keeping distance from each other. So let's look at the site operations that are specific to green waste. All right, this is an illustration on your screen of a general traffic flow. And so every site is going to be a little bit different, but the process is essentially the same thing. So again, not every site is going to look like this, but it will have the same components and the same volunteer positions. If we start up here in the upper left area, we've got the entrance to the site. And we're going to have somebody, one of the volunteers, one of you guys, will be at the entrance, and you'll be holding up a sign at that point. You'll see that there's a cone there. We'd like you to remain by that cone to the extent possible. We're going to place those at least 6 feet apart so that you guys know that you are in the safe zone if you are near your cone. The next 2 points, you see cone number 2 and number 3 right here and here. And those are two positions that sort of work in tandem. You guys will be on either side of the car that comes in, or truck or trailer, whatever the resident is driving. One of you will do load inspection, and we'll go over all of the requirements and the signs that are being used. The other one will be collecting data. The data collection person is going to have a small sign on a T-post. They're also going to have a handheld electronic device, which we will provide for you and which we will clean for you. The next position is going to be load routing. So after a load has been inspected and we've collected the data, the license plate number and then the approximate size of the load that's being brought in and some other information, then that vehicle will move forward to the next station, which is load routing. And so what we're doing is if somebody is able to unload their own vehicle, they're going to go to one site. And if somebody is not able to do that, if a resident comes in and they have an injury or something else that prohibits them from being able to unload their own vehicle, we're going to have some paid staff on hand who will help the residents unload their vehicles. If that's the case, we ask that the residents remain in their vehicle at all times. We will handle the rest of it for them. However, it would be very time consuming for us to unload every single vehicle. And so we ask, if you're able to load the vehicle yourself, chances are you're able to unload the vehicle yourself. Please go to the self-unloading section. So if you follow here, we've got this person at load routing, and they're going to direct traffic to either self-unloading, which is this one over here, or they're going to direct it to assisted unloading. After that, the traffic will merge back and go over to the exit. We're going to have another volunteer that's over there by the exit traffic. Okay? So volunteers will be at position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8. We're also going to have, you can see our little image here of the porta potties and hand washing stations. That's what they look like. We'll have a little pop-up there and a table that has all the necessary supplies. We'll have some refreshments for you guys to work. Just keep in mind we're not going to be providing lunch for everybody, so you might want to pack a lunch for yourself or prepare accordingly with some other snacks if you prefer. All right, so let's look at the volunteer positions. This is the first one. You saw that cone number 1. This is what I'm talking about. You will have a two-sided sign, stop and go, pretty self-explanatory, I think, but you're going to have people stop at the entrance if the site is full or for other reasons, and then give them a go when it's safe for them to proceed. Just keep in mind, I don't want you trying to stand in front of a car to stop it. My concern is for your safety, so make sure you're off to the side and make sure that you're making eye contact with the driver of the vehicle so that you guys know that you see each other, okay? Make sure that the site doesn't have more vehicles than the stated limit. Well, there's going to be a limit that we talk to you about when we're on site. I think once the traffic has been flowing for a few minutes, it's going to be self-explanatory. But in general, we just want to make sure that we don't have so many cars on the site that everybody's backed up and it's just mayhem. If you see any traffic incidents that are on the road, make sure you have a cell phone with you. You can reach out to the site supervisor and ask them to call 911 if they need to, or if you have to, stop all traffic with your stop sign. Hopefully they are listening to you, and then you can go ahead and call 911, and that's if you see an accident that's taking place on the road, okay? If you have any issues or see a problem with the traffic flow, just make sure you reach out to the site supervisor. You can stop the traffic at any time. We totally empower you to do that, and then you can have that conversation with the site supervisor about the condition that you think is unsafe. The next position is a lot more complicated. It's not incredibly difficult, but it's just more involved than a simple stop and go this way sort of routing. This is going to be the check-in data. This data is really important for us to collect. We want to make sure that every truck or trailer, car, what have you, bicycle, I don't know, who comes through the site to drop off their green waste, we want to make sure that we collect information about that. Rather than asking people their names, their phone numbers, and their addresses and things like that, we don't need that information. We just ask that you collect the license number, and I'll go over that a little bit more with you guys. So we're going to provide a tablet or a smartphone to you, and there's going to be a form that's already loaded onto that device. The form just has a few quick questions, and if you can answer most of those without interacting with anybody, although if you look on the right side over here where I'm talking about your two-sided sign, it's going to be hanging from a T-post so that you can have your device in one hand and enter data, and then you can flip that sign to one side or the other. There are two questions that we need to ask people. The first one is, how many hours were spent preparing all of the green waste that they are bringing in that day? So if somebody comes in 3 times, we'll probably ask that question 3 times. However, we're going to filter it out by their license plate number and then remove any duplicates to make sure that we're not doubling and tripling the amount of hours that were spent collecting. And then the next side of the sign, so that's one side, and then the next side, you'll flip it over. How many dollars were spent preparing all the green waste today? And that means if you had a landscaper come out and do a bunch of clearing on your property, and they are the ones who are bringing that waste in, then how much money did they charge, or how much money did you pay somebody to get that work done? The reason this is important is these are in-kind donations. They are donations of time or money on the part of the participants, and that helps count towards the grants that we, as we track how that money is spent, and it also helps for, a variety of other reasons for fire-wise communities and things like that. It's always good data to have, even though it takes a moment to collect that information from people. This is the one answer that the driver of the vehicle is going to have to answer you. So they are going to need to roll down the window, and you can make that symbol, that hand sign to them to get them to understand that they do that. You can still stay back 6 feet while you're asking those questions. You might have to speak up a little bit and listen very carefully for what their answer is. So if you have any if you have a very quiet voice, or if you have any hearing challenges, you might consider taking another position, because that could slow things down quite a bit. So there's going to be the online form. You're going to enter that data into the online form and then hit submit. Just a reminder that this is one of the more complex positions. It's best suited to somebody who feels very comfortable using technology. So if you are the kind of person where your cell phone never works for you, maybe do something else on the site. I might be one of those people. The form is very easy to use, and just if you need assistance, again, you can talk to the site supervisor. They'll be able to help you with whatever you have. And if at some point during the day you don't feel like that's the position for you, you want someone else to do that, it's okay to trade. Just keep in mind that the tablet and everything else needs to be wiped down before you do something else. All right, here's an example of what the data collection form looks like. Just a little bit more detail for this particular position. It's a series of screenshots that I'm going to show you, and so it's not just this form right here. There's actually a lot more that goes with it. All right, so at the top you see that it's got the location at which we're collecting. In this example, I've used Penn Valley, my hometown, and you'll see the first question that we're asking is, what's the license plate number of the vehicle that's carrying the load? In other words, if you have a car that comes in with a trailer, then you're going to report the trailer license number. If for some reason the trailer doesn't have a license plate, number on it or a license plate on it, then by all means use the car, the truck that's pulling it. If you have a truck that is full, it's very self-explanatory. You just enter the license plate number of the truck. We're not associating any names with this, so nobody needs to worry about us collecting data and using that, for some nefarious purpose. Really, we're just going to use that field to sort, to make sure that we're separating out any double reporting as people bring, 3 or 4 trailer loads or truckloads per day. The next question on the form is how many hours were spent preparing all of the green waste that you're bringing to that location that day. All right, and so that's something we're going to be tracking, and you can just type in a number for that. The next section is related to it, and again, these are the ones where you're going to have a little interaction with the driver and ask these questions. The next question is how many dollars were spent, including supplies and hired labor, to prepare all of the green waste that you're bringing to this location today. So what the goal is to figure out how much green waste was spent, how much money was spent collecting all of the green waste, right, per that day, and also how much time was spent doing that. The next one, data collection form, page, 3 maybe at this point. We're going to just capture what type of vehicle was being used to bring the load in. All right, you got me. I didn't put bicycle on this list, but I do have automobile, SUV. Automobile you might laugh at, but believe it or not, we've had a few people show up in a Prius in previous years, and the back of it is jam-packed with green waste. So we put automobile on there. Also SUV, a small pickup truck, like one of those little mini, Toyota, whatever, little trucks, or big ones like a great big Dodge or something like that. Also trailer is an option, or a commercial truck or trailer. Now we're not giving carte blanche, any landscaping service to come and bring as much waste as they want. They're welcome to bring something if they've been hired by a resident. But we're not going to be a disposal service for every landscaping, and the only reservation we have, because getting green waste out of the community is getting green waste out of the community. It's always a good thing. However, we don't want the residents to get charged by a landscaping company to get rid of the green waste and then pay a dump fee, only to have somebody, hopefully there aren't that many people who would do this, but have somebody maybe who isn't quite so honest come and bring waste to us for which they've already charged one of our residents. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that, and the site supervisor will look at things like that. And this when we collect this information, it may seem a little bit silly, but if we find that the majority of people are showing up in cars, it helps us shape the services going forward. We can determine how best to serve the community. So even though that may not seem like it's really important information, it is something that will be useful to us in the future. Okay, so this is the question. So what we want to do is try to capture the cubic yardage of the green waste that's brought in with each load. So if you look at it, we've got 3 dimensions, height, width, and length, that you can choose from. I don't think that we're going to have a load that is, for example, 1 foot in width. So you may not use all of those little radio button spots, but just try to estimate the best you can. If you look at, a truck bed, that it's not 15 feet long. It's probably a lot shorter. So hopefully this gives you the option to capture. If you do see something that's larger than 10 feet, well, go ahead and check 10 feet and we'll figure it out in the end. But do the best you can to estimate the size of the load, the width and the length, and then the height also in feet. And that will help us to formulate sort of a rough estimate. It's not going to be the final number that we use when we calculate all of the waste that we've collected, but it will certainly be an important data point to help us understand what it is that we're processing, because it takes time and money. We want to make sure we're not overspending on our project. The next one, has the load passed inspection? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but you keep in mind that you're going to be in tandem with the load inspector if you're doing this data collection. The load inspector is going to look into the back of the vehicle or the truck bed and identify any items that are prohibited. So you're going to have to kind of watch what they're doing. They're going to have a sign that they stand next to where they show almost like a Vanna White kind of thing, where they say, you've got poison oak, or you've got blackberry, or you've got Scotch broom, and they're going to sort of indicate that on this sign. And so you'll watch what they're doing and then use this section of the form right here to indicate what prohibited items are in that load. And then up at the top, you can say, yeah, they can proceed to unload, everything's fine, or the load was turned away completely, or they may have one or two items that are easily set aside and they can still unload, but they have to, make sure that those items are not added to our green waste pile. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And finally, you get one moment if you entered your form and all of a sudden something goes sideways, or the person, I don't know, I'm not sure what scenario this would, the whole form would be useless. But if it looks like the person is not really going to drop off their waste at the site, then you would say, oops, please disregard this form. You can check that right over here. Or, which is hopefully mostly the case, you're going to say, yes, by all means, let's save this form. Then you're going to click this submit button right there. Okay. So the other position, the one that works in tandem with the data collection, is going to be the load inspection. There's going to be two slides for this. So I'm going to talk about what constitutes a passing load and what constitutes a failing load. So if you're the inspector, you are to visually inspect the loads for prohibited items and notify the driver by pointing to those items on this stand-up sign that you see right here. Volunteers best suited to this position are people who can easily identify prohibited items like Scotch broom or poison oak or blackberry. I do have some images to show you. I just think you'd be a lot more comfortable in this position if you already had some experience with what these invasive species might look like. So if you look into the load and the truck and you see that they have, one, I don't know, blackberry bush or something like that, but the rest of the load is things like leaves or pine needles or limbs that have been cut or something like that, then it's okay to pass that load, but we need to make sure we flag that load for the people downstream to let them know that there are some items that cannot be unloaded from this trailer or vehicle that comes through. So we're going to provide you with some yellow Post-it notes. If there is, if the load can generally pass, but there is something in there that cannot be unloaded, we just ask that you pull off one of those yellow Post-it notes, put it on the windshield of the car, not in a manner that would cause that person to crash when they leave, please. And that way, at the unloading area, then the staff that's working that can identify that load and know to watch for any prohibited items so that those items remain either in their trailer or their vehicle. I think that's about it for there. And we have a two-sided handheld sign in addition to this great big stand-up sign, so you're not trying to manage too many things at once. The two-sided sign will just say, do not unload prohibited items, and that's just to let them know you can proceed, but make sure certain things stay in, and hopefully you have indicated with your hand what those items are off this list right here. Now, if the load is so hopelessly intertwined in terms of the prohibited items and then the acceptable items, we have to reject the entire load. And I'll give you an example. If you have Scotch broom in there and even just a few shrubs, something like that, the seeds are usually mixed in. And so what we want to do is make sure that those species don't get spread throughout the county. At the end of this event, we're going to be grinding up or chipping a great deal of this material. The last thing we want to do is have some sort of noxious invasive species mixed in with this chipped material. That's why we have to be pretty strict about it. You might want to just let people know as you're working this event and sort of spread the word, which hopefully you do, that we cannot accept things like Scotch broom or poison oak or blackberry, especially Himalayan blackberry, root balls, trash, or any limbs that are greater than 6 inches in diameter, and that includes wood rounds from felling a tree or something like that. So if you look into a load and you see that there are just so many things in there, or enough Scotch broom to make it really problematic, then it's up to you to say, I'm sorry, we can't accept your load. We have a sign, so that makes it easy. You can just hold that up and say, I'm so sorry, we can't accept this load. The people have the option to bring it to waste management, or they can bring it to their house and they can figure out how to dispose of it from there, but we can't take it. Now, if that is the case and the load is rejected, then we will also give you some red Post-it notes. That is a red Post-it note on the windshield, again, in a safe location where it's not going to impair somebody's ability to look out their windshield. And then from there, you're going to direct them off the site. You're just going to, let them know I'm so sorry, and then sort of direct them to the exit. And the staff working on the unloading area will know that if they see a red Post-it note on that windshield, that means that those people cannot unload there. They're going to have to figure some other way to get rid of the green waste that they have. Here's some examples of Scotch broom. I found this lovely botanical poster right here, and you can see the seed pods and what the seeds look like. It's those beautiful flowers that are yellow that we see this time of year that are just so lovely. However, we want that stuff out of the community as quickly as possible, and so this is a great example of a botanical illustration of what Scotch broom looks like. If you look up close, you're going to see these lovely yellow flowers, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now. By the time the event is over in June, the majority of those yellow flowers will be gone. So you might see something a little bit different, probably like this example right here, where you see just the branch itself and the leaves coming out. And if somebody has pulled Scotch broom out and it's died, or they've sprayed it with Roundup or something like that, it might look like this. And here is what we never want to see, which is these dried seed pods that have released their leaves. Probably won't be by that time of year, but it will be getting close as we get towards the end of the event. So that's what Scotch broom looks like. If you are not comfortable, I would say just Google the images and see all the different pictures of Scotch broom that people have taken over the years, and sort of educate yourself if you plan on being in that position. All right, the dreaded poison oak. So we have some green leaves right here, and that's a little bit later in the season, a little bit later in the spring, I should say. When it first comes out, you sort of see this red and green leaf over here, very shiny. This might also turn color later in the year, but that's usually towards the fall. You'll see a lot more red. The surface can be very oily looking, like this one, or it might not be very oily looking, but what they always tell you, leaves of 3, let them be. So keep in mind that, again, if this material is all ground up and chipped, the last thing you want to do is give somebody poison oak and have that spread everywhere in the community. And poison oak is not just small. It can get pretty big. I know on our property here in Penn Valley, or at least in the hillside back behind us, we have some pretty big poison oak. I would call them trees at this point. They're really, really big. All right, so that's what poison oak looks like, and don't think that you're going to pull that out of somebody's load. The last thing you want to do is touch this stuff. Here's an example of Himalayan blackberry, and of course you see these lovely thorns over here. Also, here's a root ball. It doesn't look very big, but keep in mind that these little shoots right here, you could be spreading blackberry. If that got in the load and didn't get ground up properly, we could have Himalayan blackberry spreading even farther. What you probably will see is something like these flowers right here. That'll be about the right time. You probably won't see berries until June or so. And people may not, bring it in with berries. It doesn't have to have berries for it to be blackberry at that point. So anyway, we want to make sure that that doesn't get spread also, so that cannot be in the load. And there are other prohibited items. We have things like root balls over here. These are not the best examples, but you know what the ball of a tree looks like, and that's a root ball. We can't accept items like that. Also, some people may bring their leaves in trash bags. We're not going to be accepting trash bags themselves. If somebody shows up with a trash bag, they're welcome to unload that, by ripping open the bag, but we are not going to be collecting any garbage of any kind. And so they should make sure they take that trash bag with them. Don't take a trash bag full of things, full of leaves or pine needles, throw it, in its entirety, leave the bag behind, and then leave us to clean that mess up and rip open that bag. Oops, I have a little typo right there. That should say trash or trash bags. All right, and then last but not least, one of the other prohibited items is going to be rounds. So people have asked us if they can bring their tree rounds from having a tree taken down. The answer is no. We have no way to process that for you. We can't grind it, we can't chip it, we can't do anything. So if you have one of those and you bring it to the site, it's going to go home with you, because we are not going to be accepting that. Okay, so that's it for the inspection position. The next one is a lot easier. You're simply going to ask people, do you need help unloading, or can you unload yourself? And so you're going to have just a one-sided sign that says, do you need help unloading? Then you're going to route traffic the way that it needs to go, either to self-unloading or to the assisted unloading. If you see somebody come through who has a red Post-it note, show them to the exit nicely, and you can smile, but they won't see it because you'll have a face covering on. Maybe you'll see it in the eyes, but you'll have to watch for the response from the residents, and then you can just simply do a thumb this way or that way, just to show them which way that they need to go for the unloading. So the two places that people can get routed are going to, well, three if you count the exit. Hopefully we don't have a lot of those, but the main two are going to be staff assisted unloading. We're going to have at least 2 staff members at that position, and these are paid staff. These are not volunteers. We're not going to work you guys to death to make sure that you, or to ask you to unload the vehicles. That's not what we're about. They're going to have to watch for a Post-it note to alert them if there are prohibited items in the load, and then they can remove that note from the windshield when the unloading is complete. They will be assisting the residents with the unloading of the green waste, and also maintaining social distancing at the time, so 6 feet apart if possible. They will have face coverings on as well, just so you know. And then they will be directing the resident to the exit traffic volunteer, who's going to be ultimately responsible for, directing them off of the site. And then there's staff unloading, or sorry, a staffed position at the self-unloading station. And so that staff member will assist they'll assist the assisted unloading, if you will, if need be, but they will also be watching for Post-it notes to make sure that if somebody comes up and they have a yellow Post-it note that says they have a prohibited item, make sure that that doesn't get dumped off when that person is doing the unloading. And they'll also be helping with the merging, the safe merging from the staff assisted unloading with their section, which is the self-unloading. And finally, for the volunteers, probably one of the easier positions that you can have, you're going to be conducting the exit traffic. So you just have to watch and make sure people are driving carefully and they're paying attention to what's going on. You also have a stop and go sign that you're going to be flashing to people to let them know that it's okay to proceed, or to ask them to please wait until the driving conditions are safe in that area. And again, we ask that you watch for any emergencies that take place on the roadway that is adjacent to the site. And if you see anything, by all means, stop traffic if you need to, call 911. If you see something that's unsafe, then make sure that you bring that information to the attention of the site supervisor and go ahead and halt traffic until that situation is resolved. The last thing we want is for somebody to get hurt on one of our sites. All right, we're almost done. Hang in there. So these are safety reminders for all of the volunteer positions and even the paid positions. Keep your face covering on at all times and please practice good hygiene. Don't touch the cars, don't touch the residents, don't touch any items belonging to the residents. Make sure that you're keeping 6 feet away or more from each other and from the residents in the cars. Point to signs and use hand signals to communicate, polite hand signals, to communicate with residents whenever possible. You can clap your hands or wave your arms overhead to get somebody's attention. With traffic, pedestrians, greenways, pandemic, there's a lot going on at that site. So let's just make sure that you're keeping your, what's the expression, keep your head on a swivel so you can keep an eye on everything that's taking place on site. Remember that your safety is really important to us. We really appreciate our volunteers very much. We want to make sure that while you're on site, you are safe, you're well cared for, and you're appreciated and you feel valued. So if there's anything going on, number one, take care of yourself. If there's a problem, make sure you communicate that to the site supervisor immediately. And you know, we love our supervisors. They're going to be great people to work with. We trust them, you know, to take good care of you. But if for some reason you can't come to an agreement, you know, you're welcome to call me. We're going to have a list of other phone numbers that are important, and that'll be over on the supply table. And you're welcome to call and report anything directly to the office if you feel it's unsafe, unwise, you know, unwelcome. And I think that is about it.